Google built one of the most profitable digital businesses in history, generating over $200 billion annually from advertising tied primarily to user search behavior. Every time a user searched and clicked on a result, Google earned revenue, which created a system where monetization depended directly on user interaction. Billions of searches were processed daily, and this scale allowed the company to convert intent into consistent advertising income. This model worked because users needed to explore links to find answers, which ensured that clicks remained central to the experience. However, new developments in artificial intelligence began changing how information is delivered to users. Instead of presenting multiple links, AI systems started providing direct answers within the interface itself. When users receive answers without clicking, the interaction that generates revenue begins to disappear. This creates a structural shift where improving the product experience may reduce the underlying monetization mechanism. This is the core tension facing Google, where the evolution of search threatens the very behavior that its business depends on. Google's rise was built on organizing the web through search, where users entered queries and received ranked results based on relevance. This created a system where user intent could be captured and translated into monetizable interactions through advertising. As search usage increased globally, advertisers followed user attention, which turned Google into a central marketplace for digital advertising. By the late 2010s, Google had become the dominant gateway to information, processing billions of searches every day. Revenue scaled with query volume and click activity, which made the system highly efficient during expansion. Search ads generated high margins because they targeted users at the moment of intent, increasing conversion likelihood. YouTube and display advertising expanded the ecosystem, but search remained the primary driver of profitability. This created a model where growth depended on maintaining high levels of user interaction within search results. As long as users clicked through links to find answers, the system remained stable and highly profitable. At its core, Google's advertising model is built on a cost-per-click structure, where advertisers pay when users engage with search results. This means revenue is generated only when users move beyond the search page and interact with links. The system depends on a sequence of actions: query, results, click, and then conversion, which completes the monetization cycle. More searches increase potential impressions, but clicks are what ultimately drive revenue. This creates a structure where user behavior directly determines financial performance. Advertisers bid for placement on keywords, which allows Google to maximize revenue based on demand for user attention. As competition for keywords increases, cost per click rises, which further strengthens revenue generation. However, this model relies on users continuing to click through results rather than receiving complete answers immediately. This dependency on click behavior becomes a vulnerability when the interface begins to change how information is delivered. By the early 2020s, Google was processing well over 8 billion searches per day, which reinforced its position as the primary gateway to online information. Advertising revenue exceeded $200 billion annually, with the majority coming from search-based ads tied to user queries. This scale allowed Google to capture a significant share of global digital advertising spend, often estimated at around 25 to 30%. High query volume combined with strong advertiser demand enabled consistent revenue growth over many years. YouTube added another layer of monetization through video advertising, but search remained the most efficient revenue engine. At peak performance, the system converted user intent into revenue with minimal friction, which supported high operating margins. This created a perception of a stable and highly scalable business model. However, This stability depended on users continuing to interact with search results in a predictable way. As long as clicks remained central to the experience, the model sustained both growth and profitability at scale. As the search experience evolved, Google began introducing features that provided answers directly on the results page, reducing the need for users to click through links. Elements such as featured snippets, knowledge panels, and instant answers increased convenience, but they also changed user behavior. When users obtained information without leaving the search page, the number of external clicks began to decline. This created a subtle shift where the product improved from a user perspective, but the monetization mechanism faced pressure. At the same time, mobile usage increased, which reduced screen space and concentrated attention on fewer visible results. Fewer visible links meant fewer opportunities for user interaction, which tightened the pathway to revenue generation. The system was becoming more efficient at delivering answers, but less dependent on the click-based flow it was built on. This introduced a structural tension where improving usability began to reduce monetizable actions. These changes remained manageable initially, but they laid the groundwork for a more significant disruption as technology advanced. The introduction of generative AI into search marked a significant shift in how information could be delivered to users. Systems like ChatGPT and Google's own Bard began providing direct, synthesized answers rather than lists of links. This reduced the need for users to click through multiple sources because the answer was presented within the interface itself. As adoption of these systems increased, user behavior began shifting toward receiving information instantly rather than exploring results. This change affected the core sequence of search interaction, where the click step could be bypassed entirely. If fewer users click on results, the volume of monetizable actions declines, which directly impacts advertising revenue potential. At the same time, competitors began integrating AI into their platforms, increasing pressure on Google's search dominance. The company faced a choice between maintaining its existing model or adapting to a new interface that could reduce click-based income. This marked the point where technological advancement directly challenged the behavior that Google's business model depends on. As AI began reshaping how users interact with search, Google moved to integrate generative responses directly into its own search experience. Features such as AI overviews were introduced to provide summarized answers within the results page, which aligned the product with changing user expectations. This improved usability, but it also intensified the challenge of maintaining click-based monetization within the same interface. At the same time, Google explored new advertising formats that could be embedded within AI-generated responses. This required redefining how ads are presented because traditional link-based placement becomes less visible in an answer-driven interface. The company also emphasized maintaining relevance and trust in its results, which became critical as AI-generated content expanded. Despite these efforts, uncertainty remained around how effectively ads could be integrated without reducing user experience. Revenue remains strong in the short term, but the long-term impact of reduced click behavior was still unclear. This response phase showed that adapting the product was necessary, but aligning it with the existing business model remained a complex challenge. As AI began reshaping how users interact with search, Google moved to integrate generative responses directly into its own search experience. Features such as AI overviews were introduced to provide summarized answers within the results page, which aligned the product with changing user expectations. This improved usability, But it also intensified the challenge of maintaining click-based monetization within the same interface. At the same time, Google explored new advertising formats that could be embedded within AI-generated responses. This required redefining how ads are presented because traditional link-based placement becomes less visible in an answer-driven interface. The company also emphasized maintaining relevance and trust in its results, which became critical as AI-generated content expanded. Despite these efforts, uncertainty remained around how effectively ads could be integrated without reducing user experience. Revenue remains strong in the short term, but the long-term impact of reduced click behavior was still unclear. This response phase showed that adapting the product was necessary, but aligning it with the existing business model remained a complex challenge.